Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our course breakdown for this week's RBC Heritage. Gonna go over all things Harbour Town Golf Links, get you ready for all of your exposure. And last week at the Masters was absolute cinema, but this week we got ourselves a signature event, a golf course that could steal the show out there as well. So it's not dilly-dally whatsoever. Go over everything that you need for this week, including some course details, a little hole-by-hole breakdown of all the shots required around here, and then towards the end, my custom modeling, my key stats and comp courses that I'm using to identify my top pieces of exposure. So by the end, you'll be a complete expert on all things Harbour Town, so let's not waste any time at all and hop on in with first off some of those course details and what to expect from this event. This is a signature event like I was mentioning before, and it's up there on Hilton Head and a par 71 designed by Pete Dye. It's got a lot of interesting angles to it, a much tighter golf course than what we had at Augusta National, and though it's not overly long at about 7,200 yards, when you get some wind kicking up around here, it can play well over par. So it's one of my favorite golf courses that we have around the PGA Tour. I've gone there 2 of the last 4 years to see it all out there in person, so I have a pretty good idea of what to expect around here. But a golf course that I could actually play myself is not one where you have to be a bomber to go out there and succeed, and you'll see that with some of your past champions here. You've got your players like Scotty, bombers that have gone out here and won, but also a lot of shorter players that have gotten the job done as well. In terms of your agronomy, the same kind of agronomy that we've seen for most of the tour the last few months. You have the Poetrellis overseed, so the greens going from bent grass at Augusta back to that overseed, and then you have that ryegrass overseed from tip to toe. So what you had in the Florida swing, even some of those events in Texas, the same type of grass across the board. But the real key defining feature of this golf course would be all the trees that you have along the fairways here, real tight corridors from that perspective, but also tiny greens around a Harbour Town. In fact, when we take a look at the average, they're less than 4,000 square foot per green, which make them among the tiniest in all the golfing world. So on top of them having some undulation to them, they're not all that easy to go out there and putt and chip on. Your iron play is going to be of the utmost importance. They've got about 51 sand bunkers in play, and you can see over here, there is water in play on all 18 holes. So there's a lot of trouble out there that can be had. Some of it is well out of the way, and you'd kind of have to shank the ball to end up getting to it, but a golf course that really prioritizes being accurate off the tee and out there into those tiny greens. And there have been a few tiny changes since last year. Holes number 2 and hole 6 had a few bunkers change into waste areas, and then also they've changed some of the bulkheads around the golf course. But other than that, it's our usual RBC Heritage. And if we take a look at some of the averages over the last 3 seasons, you'll see your fairway average is relatively high. Reason for that, of course, is that you're not hitting as many drivers around this golf course. They are relatively tight corridors, but when you're hitting irons and 3-woods, you're going to have a higher fairway rate. Also, your green regulation percentage a little bit lower than your PGA Tour average. Worth noting that with those tiny greens, it's going to be harder to hit the surfaces, but because you have shorter clubs in, it's not going to be like a 10% lower than the PGA Tour average. Scrambling rate a little bit higher than usual, so you're going to get up and down a little bit more than what you see on other golf courses. And your 3-putt percentage, because of those small greens, is also going to be a little bit lower than usual. Birdie percentage about the PGA Tour average, and the bogey percentage also a little bit lower than usual. So it's a par 71 setup, kind of leaning into those last 2 categories. And if we take a look at some of the analytics from this golf course, it's not really a bomber's paradise. It's also not a golf course where if you're a super short hitter, it's going to be a massive problem. And what I really noticed over here on the approach distribution is first off that you're actually going to have some shots out of the rough, which is different than Augusta National. Augusta, of course, you hardly have any rough out there at that track. And then also this 125 to 175 range is utilized a lot more than usual. The 50 to 125 is always going to use either the most or maybe the second most out there at tour events, but this 125 to 175 range, it's usually number 2 or 3, and you can see there it's actually number 1 in terms of utilization this week. So a lot of people hitting in those buckets, but you can see on the right side as well that when you hit it into the rough around here, not usually that much of a penalty. The around the green distribution is also pretty balanced. Unlike Augusta, where you didn't have many shots coming from the rough around the green, it is across all the different categories over there to the left side. And then your putting, the main thing that I noticed is that your make rates here are a little bit higher than your PGA Tour average. So especially when you get to this 4 to 6 range, it's about 4% higher than your average there. Your 7 to 10 foot range, you're also making just under 2.5% more than your PGA Tour average there. You've got some pure surfaces, greens that though are small out there, you're going to end up filling it up on. So if you have that second shot dialed in, especially from 125 to 175, could be a good week out there for your players. Now let's go hole by hole and give you an idea of exactly what these players are facing. So the first hole is a little bit of a handshake, no drivers around here. There's just no reason to force it down there with how tight it is. And also an iron shot from less than 150 yards. Now the pin location here is really the star of the show. Some of them, especially the ones with a lot of slope around them, can be difficult. But compared to a lot of the other holes around here, a birdie look if you can keep the ball in play. Hole 2 is 550, so it is your first par 5. And like all the par 5s here, if you can hit the fairway, they're reachable in 2 for everybody. Now, the issue is going to be hitting the fairways because they are so narrow off the tee. And when you do have to force a driver down those chutes, that's when it gets tough to hit the short stuff. So second shot here might be a layup for some players. And the green complex, though you can't really appreciate it from the overhead view, is one of the more difficult that you have at the course. Hole 3 is 466, so it runs down that same direction. If you miss left, that could be a real bad miss in this penalty area. I've seen it plenty of times myself. The bella area is to the right, and if you miss over there under those trees, you're going to have to shape something to get up close to the screen. And because it's a little bit longer than some of the other holes out there, it does require a mid to long iron, depending on what you hit off the tee. Hole 4 is 195, so it's your first par 3 that you have in play. A little bit of watered down play on the left, so could be a problem for some players. Hole 5 is 565, so this one's a little bit of a dogleg from right to left. It is still reachable in 2, but the arrow, or I should say the angle off the tee, does make it a little bit awkward to hit the short stuff. Hole 6 is 418. You do have a little bit of OB down the left. They claim there's water in play on this hole, but I don't really see it from the overhead view. But it's a birdie hole, especially if you're hitting less than 3 wood off the tee, and if you can hold it over there on that corner. Hole 7 is 195, so this is one of the par 3s that, once again, technically water's in play, but you'd have to really mishit it to get it over there. You've got some trees in play that you can't really see from this overhead view, but especially this front left tree is gonna get hit by players, and if you do hit that tree, it could go down there into the lake. Hole 8 is 474, so this is a longer par 4 that you have around this golf course. You're not going to see a ton of them around here, and the water is in play for the second shot, but it really requires you to be out of play with the tee shot to be hitting it that far left. Hole 9 is 329, so this is where I'm usually parked up if I'm at this golf course because it's right next to the clubhouse, and I usually have a ticket that lets me in the clubhouse and whatnot because I know some people that are members here, and I can sit here on this little porch, grab a drink, breakfast, watch players hitting on the putting green, and then also over here. But this green is amazing. I mean, it's got multiple lobes to it. It's drivable even if they don't move up the tee box, but for moving day, sometimes they make it even shorter so that everyone can go for it off the tee. A true risk-reward par 4 that is a whole lot of fun to watch if you're there in person. Hole 10 is 467, so this goes back the other way. Water down the left side. You have all of the world to the right. I mean, you could hit it the whole way to Narnia over here, and you're not going to have any issues. So you're going to see a lot of players doing that, which, depending on the pin location, could set up a difficult angle if it's something over there on that right side. 11 is 437, so this one's a pretty straightforward par 4, but most players are taking less than driver because it narrows up the further down that you hit it. Hole 12 is 434, so the same kind of length of par 4. This one, though, doglegs from left to right, and you can see the angles really coming into play here, right? You've got some that dogleg from right to left, in this case from left to right, and if you can't shape the shot properly, you're going to have a really hard time keeping it in the fairway. 13's another shorter par 4, another layup one as well. This is the hole where the crowd was giving Patrick Cantlay a ton of issues with his pace of play, including myself out there a few years ago. 14 was 192, so this is another par 3. You've had some players that end up against the bulkheads to the right, which could create a little bit of drama. Shout out to Patrick Cantlay a few years ago for that one as well, but another difficult par 3 because you can't really feel the wind on this section of the course. A lot of trees that are protecting you from that. Then you got 15 at 588, so this is the longest par 5 that you have out here. It's still reachable in 2 for your longer players, but because of the angle and the trees here in the corner, you're going to see a lot more layups here at 15. 16 is 423. This is a dogleg from right to left, so, you know, like some of the other ones that went from left to right, this is an example of going the other direction. 17 is the coastal par 3. You've got a ton of wind usually coming off of the water over there behind the green. And then finally, 18 is the widest fairway in golf. It's like 120 yards wide. Looks like some of the ones around Augusta National. And your second shot, the only real issue is if you hit it in that stuff to the left there. Now that we've seen the course, let's go through some key stats that I'm using this week to identify my top plays. So over here on the left, we've got our normal core 4 stats. So regular off the tee, approach play, around the green, and putting. Those are always going to be in my modeling, but we're really going to focus on here together, or more so the kind of special stats that you'd incorporate for this course. So the first one we're going to focus on is going to be driving accuracy percentage. This is a golf course where you can get out of play and really cause yourself some headaches. It's not always water balls that are those headaches, and sometimes it's the kind of angles that you're hitting into the greens. And with Pete Dye golf courses, the angles are always of the utmost importance. So players that can hit the center of the fairways and keep themselves in the short stuff are going to be at a market advantage. The guys like a Morikawa and Aaron Rai, Lucas Glover, Daniel Berger, all excelling in that category. But really, the higher up on these rankings that you are, the more and more of a boost that you're going to get in the model this week. So you can see over there, guys like Corey Connors are going to be top 5 in the modeling. Daniel Berger, Aaron Rai over there at 6 and 7. And then even Morikawa, your number 1 player in the category, is also number 1 in this category in terms of accuracy. We've also got green regulation percentage, which is something I look at courses with smaller greens, and over here with sub 4,000 square foot greens, that is definitely the case. So a Morikawa number 1 in that category as well. So I have a sneaking suspicion that he's at least going to have to be in consideration for a few pieces of exposure this week. But we got Henley also towards the top end of that list. JJ Spawn, Xander Schauffele, even with the kind of sluggish return from injury, still going out there and hitting a lot of greens regulation. Sepp Straka, Scotty Scheffler, of course, a past champion at this golf course. Patrick Cantlay has also had a lot of success around Harbour Town as well, all ranking extremely high in that category. Bogey avoidance, so with the small greens, all the around the green shots that you're going to have, also playing the strategy and angles of a Pete Dye golf course. That's why I like to look at this bogey avoidance category, and that's where you can see guys like Scotty Scheffler really popping it. It's not like Morikawa doesn't rank well here as well, right? He's also up there towards the top end of the bogey avoidance, but these kind of players are more thoughtful when it comes to taking on a more difficult track, and some of it's the around the green play, some of it is even the putting for guys like a Denny McCarthy, just making a whole lot of those putts for par. But bogey avoidance in general is a stat that we've seen correlate to success around here. It's good to see guys like Scotty towards the top end of that kind of category. We've also got putting on overseed, so we got the POA Trivalous overseed back. Did not have those at Augusta, but we've had it for the last few months out here on tour, so looking at some recent form on those greens is definitely something to incorporate. So Denny McCarthy showing up in that category, but guys like Pendrith, Minwoo Lee, also Akshay Bhatia, Jacob Bridgman have been on fire over here on this part of the schedule. But Justin Thomas, I mean, look at that one. We know his ball striking stats are always going to be there, but he's been really good on these type of greens. And same thing with guys like a Thomas Dietrich has also been excelling on this overseeded surface. And then the last thing we've got over here would be around the green stats on the overseeded kind of agronomy. So that would be that ryegrass overseed that we've had for the last few months, which because you have such small greens, I mean, they're only 3,700 square foot, even your best players are going to be missing greens. So on top of just regular bogey avoidance, I'm also looking at this type of grass, and it's not as big a factor as bogey avoidance or even just your regular around the green, but it's nice to have this on top of some of those other categories. So guys like Sunjay, Minwoo, also Russell Henley, Wyndham Clark have been really chipping well off of this ryegrass, as well as players like a Tommy Fleetwood, a Bazane Hood, and a J Day. And when we put it all together, like I said, the regular 4 categories are also thrown in there as well. This is who we get for the top of our modeling. So number 1 being Colin Morikawa, Scotty Scheffler also a perfect 10, which is rare over here on the Bet the Number modeling system. Both up there tied out there at 1-2, I guess. But Russell Henley, Corey Connors rounding out 3 and 4. Sepp Straka over there at number 5. But what you're seeing with almost all these guys towards the top are guys that don't overpower courses with their power. A lot of precision guys like Sepp Straka, Russell Henley, Corey Connors are perfect examples of that. Even your Aaron Rise, your Daniel Bergers of the world, which is exactly what we want to see in our kind of modeling this week. This is a golf course where it is much more about being accurate and consistent than it is going out there and, you know, pulling the pot guider method and hitting it 400 yards. And my modeling checks out with exactly what I was hoping to see here. So when it comes to my outright betting card or over there with my DFS plays, going to be looking at a lot of players that fit that sort of mold. In terms of our comp courses, I've got 3 that really stand out. First off would be the RSM Classic, which has 2 courses out there in play. You've got the Seaside course, also the Plantation course. Seaside in play for 3 of the 4 rounds. And whether it's Seaside or even Plantation over there, I think both kind of fit this mold. There's shorter tracks where you've got a lot of those tree-lined fairways, waste areas as well that can cause you trouble if you really miss offline, and the same kind of greens in around the green setup that you have at this golf course. So not a surprise that you've had a lot of the guys that showed up in our modeling towards the top top. Like Poston, he's a quintessential course fit around here. Daniel Berger, we know he showed up multiple times, or he finished in second this past season. But the year before that's when O'Bara won. He's a little bit of a, I guess, exception to the rule with that bomber going out there and winning. But look at the rest of this top 10. I mean, Denny McCarthy, Cole, shorter players. Eric Cole, shorter guy. Mackenzie Hughes, who, by the way, has also won around the RSM Classic before that, are all guys that really fit that more short positional sort of build. And I'm also looking at the Innisbrook course, so over there at the Copperhead course at the Valspar. Of course, this year has been Victor Hovland went out there and won himself, but a lot of shorter guys that you saw showing up, and some overseed players like a Jacob Bridgman, a Bud Colley, who we saw in those rankings. And even the year before that, when we had Peter Malnati winning, obviously not a bomber off the tee, Mackenzie Hughes up there, Adam Hadwin. He's also had a lot of success around Innisbrook before that. And the year before that, we had guys like Taylor Moore showing up there. You still have a few bombers that can play well. Like, I mean, even Jordan hits it a long way now. Wyndham Clark over there in 5th place. But a lot of those shorter, kind of like lesser known players are the players that are more accurate off the tee. And over here with our last comp, we have Colonial. So that's the home of the Charles Schwab Challenge. This year, Davis Riley went out there and won, who maybe not the most accurate driver, but another one of those classical designs where they've got a lot of trouble off the tee, a lot of trees to go out there and contend with, and usually more accurate players win. So like Agrio was a great example of that, but Scotty Scheffler, Sam Burns being in the playoff the year before that shows that your top tier players, the guys that are just the winners, the best players in the field, are also worth some consideration at these sort of golf courses. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for this week's course breakdown. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come, including our DFS and betting preview a little bit later on this evening, as well as all the content throughout the rest of the week. And for a chance to earn a free month on my Patreon page, which is of course where I'm posting all my course modeling, all my projections out there for every main slate, as well as all the bets I'm getting to out there from the outright betting market, and all the stuff over there in Underdog and Prize Picks. Just give me your winning score for this week. So it'll be on a first come, first serve basis. If you get the exact winning score correct, you'll win a free month access to the Patreon. No catches on top of that. Just like I said, the first person to guess that score is going to be the winner. So go out there, guess your score before anyone goes out there and steals it from you. And best of luck with all of your exposure this week, whether it's over there in the outright betting market or over there in your DFS lineups. I hope to see a lot of your names towards the top end of those contests. And for the rest of the content this week, make sure to stay tuned to all of my social media channels, including over here at YouTube, by subscribing to the channel. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate your support here on the channel as per usual, and I'll see you guys out there later on this week.